Good evening and welcome to the WDSU News Hot Seat. I'm Travers Mackel. Of course, because of COVID-19 protocols, we are doing this from home via Zoom. And tonight we are talking about a very serious and sensitive topic that's gripping the state right now. It's the sexual assault and the sexual harassment allegations on LSU's campus inside the sports program. There was a report that was done. There have been obvious fallout from that. Les Miles was let go at the University of Kansas as football coach. Obviously, F. King Alexander no longer at Oregon State. Coming up this week in just a couple of days, there is a state Senate Select Committee hearing where they have requested the presence of not only the athletic director, Scott Woodward, but also football coach Ed Orgeron. And we're going to talk in depth about this. Joining us from Gentilly is former state senator J.P. Morrell. He has good insight as to what this hearing is all about. WDSU legal analyst Robert Jenkins. We should point out, while he does represent a lot of people, he is not involved in this case whatsoever. And WDSU chief investigative reporter Greg LaRose. Greg, before we get to Robert and JP, let's start with you. If you can, in a nutshell, kind of sum up how we got here this week with this hearing where Orgeron and Woodward have now been invited to testify.
Sure, and happy Easter to everyone there. This all has been months in the making, and a lot of credit goes to the investigative reporting team over at USA Today that looked at allegations against LSU Tigers Darius Geis and Drake Davis. It goes back a few years, and what they found was that claims of sexual assault, sexual battery, rape against the athletes were essentially kept under wraps within the athletic department, and that ran LSU afoul of Title IX civil rights provisions. Every university and lots of institutions are supposed to have a process through which complaints, whether they're against student athletes or the student body, has to go through this Title IX process. And that didn't happen in LSU's case. Once the USA Today report came out, back in November, LSU commissioned its own study, the Hush Blackwell report, a law firm from Chicago, dug into this for about 3 months. Their report came out in February, and LSU's reaction to that was to suspend 2 high-ranking athletic department officials, lawmakers who have various sway over the university, its budget, its regulation, have said that that's really not a harsh enough penalty. So there have been these series of legislative hearings just to get to the bottom of what happened, who knew what, and what might be an option in terms of additional discipline.
So we're going to get back, JP, we're going to talk to you in a second. Robert, really quickly, this hearing grew out of another hearing where a woman named Gloria Scott, a grandmother, claimed she was sexually harassed by Darius Geis. Ed Orgeron has commented saying that was unacceptable, but he does not recall talking to this woman. When people have these hearings, Robert, should they bring a lawyer with them?
Well, my answer is yes, because in this particular case, you might have some issues of obstruction or accessory. And the fact of the matter is, his statement seems to be that he had no direct involvement in it. And that leaves open whether it was indirect or there was some other things going on. So the answer is yes. All
right, JP, let's talk to you about this. You've sat in, you spent, I believe it was 12 years, if I'm correct, in the state Senate. You've sat through hearings like this before. Break this down for us. How does this go? They've been requested. This is not a subpoena. 1, do they have to show up? And 2, how does this go this week if Orgeron and Scott Woodward show up? Obviously, it's going to be a media circus if they show up.
Well, my understanding is they have responded to Chairman Regina Barrow, and they are showing up. So that's not the question. Them showing up is not a question. The invite is typically what's extended by a committee. And if someone's non-responsive, they'll then go to the head of their chamber in the Senate, to be the Senate president, to request a subpoena, because the Senate actually does have subpoena power. There's a process to do it. Because they responded to the invite, which was a friendly invite, so to speak, they decide to show up. It's important to not understate the amount of pressure LSU is under by the Senate and the House, insofar as they are a state institution. They are regulated in multiple different ways, whether it be their hospital system through the Department of Health and the State Senate Health and Welfare Committee, through education, through the Senate Education Committee. All these different committees have oversight over some part of LSU. And as you know, the appropriations, finance, the committees regulate their budget. So, I mean, it was a friendly invite, but it wasn't so friendly in that there would be real repercussions had they not shown up. To Robert's point, in these committees, about 8 years back in the House, I led the effort to make the witness cards require you to sign an oath on the back under penalty of perjury to not lie. When I went to the Senate, we also implemented that as well. So when they testify in front of committee, they're actually testifying under oath. It used to be a cumbersome process where, like in Congress, you have to swear someone in. Committees didn't often do it because it was very cumbersome and kind of awkward. So we changed it to a process. But to Robert's point, they're going to sign a card saying they're not lying. So if they can't answer questions and they're evasive and there is some kind of liability out there, it is very likely that it'll come up in the course of the committee hearing because someone will have pre-instructed them that if certain questions come up, remember, there are several different investigations going on simultaneously right now. LSU still has its own internal investigation going on as far as new complaints come up, they are investigating those as well. As far as, for example, if the grandmother came forward with her sexual harassment case against Mr. Geis and the kind of back and forth between her and Coach O, that's going to come up in this hearing and he'll be answering under oath. So, I mean, it gets real dicey at a certain point. And I mean, these hearings are usually pretty dry, but I would imagine that this could be one of those instances, I'm sure Greg could speak to this, where they might crash the Senate servers because the legislature live streams this stuff. The infrastructure is not there for as many people that might watch this hearing. So, I mean, I'm hoping they're going to get servers up. They're going to really be robust on the tech side because they will probably have never seen the viewership that they will see for these hearings.
Greg, we're going to get to you about what to expect, but really quickly, Robert, a lot of lawyers are involved. Greg and I are not attorneys. JP and Robert are. If you're advising somebody here, Robert, what do you tell them to do? I mean, look, Ed Orgeron is a smart guy. He's been around a long time. So is Scott Woodward. They're getting good legal counsel here. What are their lawyers telling them before they walk into this in the state capitol?
Like JP said, that if you made statements earlier that it's going to be different here, you're going to be under oath. So you got a perjury thing. So the thing is, if my guy has some liability or some sort of liability, I would tell this committee that he's going to exercise his fifth, meaning he's not going to answer at this point.
But doesn't that look, I mean, look, the appearance of I take the fifth and I'm not going to answer, isn't there a stigma with that? That it almost, even if you're not, doesn't it look like you're hiding something?
Well, it looks bad, but it keeps you out of jail at this point. So our point is to make sure our client doesn't go to jail. Of course it looks good, it looks bad, but we're not worried about whether it looks bad. We're worried about protecting our client. Greg,
what can we expect to come out of this week? I mean, look, it's just been bombshell allegation after bombshell allegation. It hasn't been really good for LSU or its athletic department. Do Scott Woodward or Ed Orgeron try to essentially use this as a podium to defend the LSU sports program? What do we expect to come out of this week?
I think that's the case. And Scott Woodward was set to testify before the select committee last week, but that hearing went on so long. That's when they heard from the grandmother here.
Gloria Scott, yeah.
That went on for a while as well. It should have. She didn't get heard in the prior meeting. What I'm thinking is that you're going to probably hear a very careful strategy of plausible deniability from the coach, from the athletic director. Scott Woodward came out in the press conference right after the Hush Blackwell report was made public and basically defended the two athletic department employees that were suspended, saying, they were good people put in an untenable position. So I really think LSU's kind of staked its flag here. And I'd be very surprised if you saw Coach Orgeron or Scott Woodward or anyone else that's called from LSU to just say, you know what? Yeah, we could have done better. I think they'll say to that extent, yes, they could have done better. But in terms of who knew what and when, I think they'll stop well short of that.
JP, let's talk about the questions that senators asked. We have all seen a lot of this in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill through various impeachments and through Senate confirmation committees for members of the U.S. Supreme Court right now. It can get very partisan. Baton Rouge is like that to an extent, but it's kind of got its own ebbs and flows. If you can walk us through, what will it be like? Will senators be trying to grill them? Or, I hate to say this, is there the star factor? Is there the wow factor of this is Ed Orgeron and this is Scott Woodward, and people pull back and almost go light? What do you expect? I know that you're not in the Senate anymore, but you still have a lot of friends up there, and you were there for a long time.
I think this issue, frankly, has been fairly nonpartisan. As Greg's probably seen, there are already 3 bills filed to rewrite Act 172 I passed 6 years ago dealing with collegiate sexual assault to really address a lot of the issues out of the Blackwell report. So, I mean, I don't think you'll see partisanship as far as some people attacking and some people defending. As far as how hard they'll go into the questions, I think that you'll probably see some members that are going to be more aggressive than others. I think that there's an element of there's some people on the committee who are currently running for office. They'll probably give some pretty strongly worded questions because, I mean, earned media is earned media. But for the most part, everyone was pretty incredulous in the last 2 meetings. I don't think this will be a friendly committee meeting at all. I do think that, to Greg's point, I think that you will see a lot of efforts from not just LSU. I mean, if you look at a lot of what's going on with all these cases, and I'm sure the USA Today reporting is not over yet. It's a systemic problem across all the universities. LSU is kind of in the limelight because it's the flagship university, but all the universities have significant problems with Title IX compliance. I think that you'll see many legislators point out that, is this a systemic problem or is it a one-off? That's going to be very awkward for the athletic department to really kind of tackle because, as you know, there's still new stuff coming out. So you can't say it was just these 2 cases and we've nipped it in the bud if you also know there's a couple other cases that are being investigated simultaneously. So I don't think you're really going to get a lot of definitive answers at all. And I think that legislators will probably push as far as they can push. But if you've got 2 people that have been coached very well by very good attorneys, they're going to give very evasive, non-committal answers to not perjure themselves. And I think what you're going to look at, very similar to Congress, is a very confrontational hearing with a lot of very great questions asked, with a lot of great follow-ups where we don't uncover nearly as much information as the public might want.
All right. That's great information, JP. Greg, I know that you and our colleague Emily Lane will be covering this and following it, so please follow us at WDSU. Really quickly, final question, Robert. Do you expect to see what JP just said? I mean, look, if you were advising people, is it be honest but proceed with caution? Is that what you expect to see from Ed Orgeron and Scott Woodward?
It depends on information that we already have from our client. If we already know asking certain questions like this is going to put him in another bind or jeopardy, again, we assert the 5th. But also, you got to keep in mind what's going to be watching, who's going to be watching, the NCAA. And that's something else you got to keep on.
All right. Well, look, I appreciate all of your time. We will cover this all this week. It's going to be one of the biggest stories, not just here